Big news drops on a Thursday evening, just when I wanted it to.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time for a reaction episode of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view post. Jhett Washington committing to the Ducks. We're so back. This morning, we were so not back, but now we're so incredibly back. We could not be. We have never been more natty than we are in this very moment, but full reaction coming up here on the show. A bonus episode of Locked On Ducks. You'll still get an episode tomorrow, which will have a slightly different tone because I recorded it earlier today. This episode, though, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So I was thinking I was done with work for the day. I was kind of hoping to be done, but then some good news came along. And in case you're wondering how I found out about this information, I found out that Jhett Washington committed to Oregon, 5-star safety, top 10, 20 player in the class of 2026, from the most trusted source I could possibly have. So this is my brother Mitchell right here. Mitchell, welcome back on the show.
Great to be here, Spencer.
Yeah, so for those of you on YouTube who are wildly creeped out right now, I am not sorry for this whatsoever, but I got off the plane flying down here to visit him, and I had a text, and he'd sent me a tweet from Dan Lanning. And what was that tweet?
Oh, you know, Spencer, just the beautiful little duck that Dan sends into the world, but he wants us to have a little bit of joy and you to do a little more work.
just a little. He just sends it out there, and then the whole world goes crazy. And this was, of course, rather significant news because this morning, as you will all hear about on tomorrow's show, it was not the piece of recruiting news we were exactly looking for.
Not exactly. Apparently, Texas A&M also has nice weather this time of the year, but Arrington going there, tough to see, but this is a nice steal for the Ducks.
It really is, because you had a lot of big schools in the fold. He's a big name. The momentum is back. Brandon Arrington is now a distant memory, right? Yeah, I mean, I barely even remembered the guy's name. I had to Google it before we came on here to record this little show.
I don't even know how to spell it.
I actually don't. I think there are two R's. I'm pretty sure there are two R's. But I just wanted to bring Mitchell on to ensure all of you that I get my information from the most reliable source imaginable. My brother sending me Dan Lanning tweets. That's the way the big boys do it, right?
I mean, the internet remains undefeated. That's why I go straight to the source with Dan.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for that. Credit where credit is due. My brother Mitchell, everybody.
That's what I'm here for.
Some of you had asked a while back if he was ever going to return on the show. And there he was. Returning on the show. So we shall bid him farewell for now and thank him for the contribution. And we will get back. Did you see how smooth that was? That was aggressively smooth. Did we practice that? Yes, absolutely. Several times, just to make sure we weren't going to pull any wires out. But getting down to the heart of the matter here, this is big for a couple of reasons. Number one, Jhett Washington, and this will make some of you in particular really, really happy. He is a 6'5", 200-pound safety. 6'5" safety. He is one of the top players in the class of 2026. The 24/7's composite rating, which is what I use personally. Everybody's got their own metrics they prefer. I like that one. It's a more holistic look with more people's input on what a player is. It's an imperfect system. Everything is. He's a top 30 player nationally, number 4 safety in the country, number 1 player in the state of Nevada. Also, I don't know that he plans to play basketball at Oregon. I don't think that he is, but he did lead his school to a 5A state championship this past season. So all around, really, really good athlete. But the schools that he goes and beats out here, that Oregon beats out here, I should say, are USC and Alabama. So USC has, of course, made no shortage of noise on the recruiting trail this offseason. I think Oregon fans, very fairly, have been waiting for the Ducks to make that surge, to make that sort of jump. And this feels like step 2, I will say, in that process. Messiah Hampton was step 1, top 10 receiver in the class, committed earlier this week. Now they go out and get Jhett Washington, and when you're going up against USC and Alabama, that tells you, number 1, Oregon did a lot of things right. Number 2, incredibly high caliber player. So He's also a Bishop Gorman kid. As Brian will tell you, Bishop Gorman is one of the top high school football schools in the entire country, not just on the West Coast, but they churn out a lot of high-level players, have for many, many years. And this is just a huge pickup for the Ducks. And it has catapulted their 2026 class inside the top 30. And that's not typically where I've been discussing Oregon recruiting at this time of the year, but with where it was not that long ago, where it was outside the top 40 before Hampton and Washington committed, Oregon's well positioned to get to where I always expect them to be, which is a top 10 class. Because the next big piece of news is Ryder Lyons committing on June 24th. So 5 days from the time that this bonus episode of the show is dropping. So early next week, Ryder Lyons will commit. And if Oregon stacks a pair of 5-star recruits within just like a 1 week span, that'll be a testament to how quickly things can change on the recruiting front. And, I've been saying for weeks here on the show that I expect June to be a good month. This is a major, major step. We could very well look back at the month of June and realize that Jhett Washington was the highest profile recruit that Oregon landed, especially in the shorter term, because Ryder Lyons, of course, is really a 2027 guy. Of course, I still want Oregon to get him, add another name to the quarterback room, and I talked about him on tomorrow's episode of Locked On College Football because I'm actually from the future. And his recruitment is probably down to Oregon and BYU. I know Duck fans are familiar with being in that specific setting because it feels like they've been there a lot. Even the ESPN article that had been written about this recruitment, because Jhett Washington's the nephew of the late Kobe Bryant, they noted that Oregon had missed some high-profile recruits for Brandon Arrington, of course, earlier in the day, and Jackson Cantwell and Jared Curtis. And so to go out there and land Washington from a recruiting standpoint, a really, really strong move by Dan Lanning on the recruiting chessboard there. And the other thing to think about with Jhett Washington committing to the Ducks, he's kind of the flagship defensive recruit at the moment. Doesn't mean there aren't other good players in the class. Of course, I've had Tristan Phillips here on the show, who was once again just stirring the pot on Twitter with Washington fans, because why the heck not? Xavier Laree shut down his recruitment. Viliami Moala and Dutch Horace, along with Tony Cumberland. I can see any of them turning into starting players for the Ducks one day. But Washington is somebody that will have a chance to start as a true freshman. It won't be easy necessarily. Probably depends on what happens with Dillon Thieneman. But his ability to play right away, I think, is as high as Oregon has had for any defensive back recruit in the last couple of years. But when you think about any particular recruiting class, like I'll just pick one that I've covered here on the show at random. Let's go 2024. You look at the top of that defensive back class, or that defensive recruiting class, and it's Elijah Rushing, Aiden Breland, and Ife Obadegwu. Rushing will have a role, I think, on the defense this year. Breland could work himself into being a starter. Ife Obadegwu is probably a starter. But every cycle you have those guys. It was Mateo in the class of 2023. Or in 2025, you'd say on the defensive side of the ball, once the recruits all low, it was definitely Naeem Offord, who is, of course, the highest rated defensive back recruit in the history of Oregon football. So you always have those sorts of guys. Jhett Washington can be that sort of guy. Will he play as a true freshman? Well, if you want to hear about that on this bonus episode of Locked On Ducks, you'll have to stick around. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Game 7 is around the corner because Tyrese Halliburton is very good. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, which didn't happen in the finals game tonight, or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. The MLB season is heating up too, and every game brings clutch hits, standout pitching, and unforgettable moments. You want to bet on that or anything else? Guess what? FanDuel is the place to do it. If you want to bet on college football, you can do that really, really easily because you've got win totals, you have got conference title odds, national title odds, individual games, which are just over 2 months away. Kansas State, Iowa State is the first big game of the year on August 23rd. We're like 2 months away from real college football games. If you want to bet on all of that, FanDuel is the place to do it. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. First $5 bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Pretty sweet deals. Check them out. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even on a bonus show, you can't not have a second segment sip. I am that committed to quality. And all of you. I considered just stashing this instant reaction for Monday's show. I considered it, but I like you guys. A little. Okay, I like you guys a lot. You rock. Okay, so the next question that popped in my mind is, will Jhett Washington wind up playing as a true freshman? He has all the traits to do that. Next week on the show, I'll get Brian back on and go to him for the film breakdown because he's, of course, awesome with that, as my everydayers out there know. But the safety position has been probably the weakest one in the Dan Lanning era, pretty consistently. Like you haven't had an all-conference caliber player. I think Evan Williams was all Pac-12 honorable mention, maybe, but that's like the best individual performance from a guy in a position group you have had since Lanning took over. And of course, I pointed out going into the Rose Bowl, hey, kind of think the safeties are the weak point of the defense, and Chip Kelly and Ryan Day saw the exact same thing. They attacked them all game, and it's just not been a position group that Oregon has had a ton of strength at, or any all-conference, high-end all-conference caliber performers at. Whereas everywhere else you look, Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, Heisman finalist. Tez Johnson had a 1,000-yard season a couple of years ago, would have again last year if he hadn't gotten injured. You look at what Terrence Ferguson did, all-conference selection. I think he was second or third team All-Big Ten, and was a first team All Pac-12, first or second team All Pac-12. Like you can find those sorts of guys. Mateo led the conference in sacks. Bossa had an All Pac-12 season at linebacker. You just haven't had that at safety. And this is a great pickup for Oregon at this moment on the recruiting trail to hopefully start to snowball some momentum. But he's going to have a chance to play as a true freshman. I don't think it's a guarantee. Factor number one, you have to look at what Dillon Thieneman does. The only guy who I am 100% certain is a starter for Oregon secondary this year. You have to know what's going to happen there, number one. Number two, you have to see how quickly some guys develop. Even highly rated recruits, even five-star kids, some develop faster or acclimate themselves to the college game more than others. I heard something interesting when I was watching the Brandon Arrington commitment video live on YouTube. I think it was his coach got up there and said, he can be a 10, but he's like a 3 right now, which I hadn't really heard. I might have misheard the words perhaps, but I think he was saying this guy is incredibly talented, but he's still got a lot more in the tank. That's someone who might not have been as likely to play as a true freshman. But the safety room is going to be littered with guys in their second or third seasons, frankly, that were incredibly talented recruits coming out of high school. Guys like Aaron Flowers, guys like, they've said Naeem Offord's not going to play back there, but Trey McNutt was a 5-star safety this class. Kingston Lopa, I think, is going to be one of Oregon's starters. There is a world where Kingston Lopa and Jhett Washington are Oregon's 2 starting safeties in 2026, and both are 6'5". And Washington is in that same sort of mold. And those sorts of players just don't come around very often. Oregon's had mostly, not entirely, but mostly smaller safeties on the back end. I think there's a pretty clear commitment by this coaching staff to go out and try to change that and have more length on the back end of Oregon's secondary. So, if Thieneman has a great season, it's his third of college football. He spent 2 years at Purdue. He could absolutely be someone that goes on to the NFL. But I think that this position group is still going to have a crazy amount of depth. And I know I haven't mentioned every safety that is in the room or that could possibly play. Those are, I think, just the guys that have stood out the most. But, some combination of Lopa and McNutt and Washington on the back end could be pretty darn good. I think that 2026 secondary will be the best one that Dan Lanning's put together since he got to Eugene. I think Jhett Washington can be a part of it. I don't know that it's a lock. I'll see what Brian says next week on the show when he does his film breakdown. But overall, the big picture news is really, really good for the Ducks to get back inside the top 30. And, if they land Ryder Lyons next week, I think that'll put them back inside the top 20. You stack up a couple more. Emmanuel Iheanacho, I talked about on today's show, depending on when you listen to or watching this one. He's committing probably later in August, but that recruitment might go through to December. But this is the second 5-star recruit that Oregon's landed. I think they wind up in the 4 to 5 range with the guys that they are after. 4 feels more likely than 5 with Arrington going to Texas A&M. But if they land Ryder Lyons, they'll be in a really good position on that front. The recruiting ranking will be really, really good as well, because when you get 5 stars, as you saw with Jhett Washington, you get a big bump. Like Hampton notched the class up, I think 4 or 5 spots, and then Washington notched it up 8 or 9, depending on what specific moment you looked at the recruiting rankings and which service you look at and all that sort of stuff. So really good news. Want to hear your guys' thoughts. Drop them in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and go Ducks.